Welcome to the JAMODI Podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders, so let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
What's up, Coach? Are you looking for a way to elevate your off-season skill development? Well, look no further. With the Bology app, you can build a workout with our library or create your own content. Send that workout to your players, and then your players complete the workout by recording their session on their phones. You can monitor and encourage competition with our leaderboards for every workout. Bology offers player development solutions in the palm of your hands. Get your team started today by going to bology.com for more info.
You mentioned some giants in coaching already with Coach T, Coach Henderson, Coach Dyer. I did a hoops talk with him, and it just, sometimes I forget that I'm doing these calls. I'm just listening, man. Just listen to a coach go. And what are some characteristics, maybe three or so, that you've seen in great coaches?
Man, I think, first off, I think you got to be a good communicator, man. And that's with everybody. That's with your players. That's with your parents, your administrators at your school, your teachers. Yeah. You don't want to be that guy that's just kind of standoffish and nobody wants to talk to and, afraid to ask a question to. And sometimes as coaches, we come off like that, me included. I'm guilty of that too. And so there's gotta be a safe space there somewhere, where your kids can come to you. And, when I first started, I had all these rules, right? And I think a lot of us did, and some of us still do. And I'd had these rules. Well, look, we're not going to talk about playing time, and I'm not going to talk to you the day before the game and the day of the game and the day out. Well, heck, when are they supposed to talk? Right. And so as I got a little older and a little bit more experienced, man, and a little less afraid of that conversation, and I'll talk basketball anytime, man, and if you got a player that plays for me, I obviously chose him to be on the team. I'm very selective about who we put in the program. It's not for everybody. And so I owe that to you. If you want to know what it's going to take for your son to play, I don't mind telling you. Now, here's the deal. I'm going to shoot you the truth. You might not like that, but I feel a lot better knowing that. Now, if you come to me because you're upset after a game and you want to talk, I'm going to ask you to come see me tomorrow. I'm not going to, yell at you or slam the door in your face or anything like that. So let's just talk tomorrow. Let's give it 24 hours and we'll talk about it. So, but the communication piece, I think, every good coach has to have. You can't do it by yourself. You have to be able to relay information. And that's not just for the problems. I'm talking about even a communicator in a timeout. Like, you have to know you definitely don't want to spend a timeout yelling at your guys and you've given them no instruction to go out there and finish the game. And so I've learned, over the years, and you can't give them too much either. And you can't have too many people talking, right? So, maybe one or two things. If I have an assistant and I trust my assistants and they're an expert in a certain area and they see something and they want to explain it, then I let them talk. I'll let them talk and I'll break the kids off, break them out back to where they're supposed to be and make sure they got matchups and, how many timeout, all of that stuff. That's part of communication. So I think communicating is super key, and it's so it's kind of underrated, to be honest with you, because to be a good coach, you got to have it. You just got to have it. You can't be afraid to talk to folks.
Coach, there's so much gold right there. I love early on you mentioned be a good communicator, not just with your team though, but with your administration, with your fellow faculty members. Like no teacher likes a coach that feels like they're not on the same team with them, like they're above them. And so you're right about that. I feel like you kind of gave us a mini master class right there of a timeout, and you nailed it. Like, when we talk about communication, it's not just the big talk right before the game. It's not just the parent meeting before the year. I watched a select game the other day watching some players, and they go into overtime. There's 15 seconds left. The coach calls a timeout, and he's yelling at them about the fact that why they got into overtime in the first place. And I'm like, man, it's your timeout. It's 15 seconds. It's a tie game. It's your ball. The ability to let go of what just happened and focus and be present on what's right in front. But maybe that's the difference too between, and this is not a knock on select coaches, but because there's some great ones out there, but the years that you've put in, it's kind of like coaching 300, where the Spartan general asked the Greeks like how many soldiers they brought, and they're like, we brought thousands, you only brought 300. But it turns out that they're like doing all these different jobs, and he asks his guys, what do you do? And they do this like chant, and he says, see, I brought more soldiers than you did. Like coaching, like this is what you do, and what you've done for 26 years has taught you those lessons about that little timeout. But coach, like to me, master teacher right there.
Yeah, you just got the ability to see things coming, right? Like just to like you walk in the gym or you walk in a certain situation, you know what's coming. Now, can you relay that to the guys that matter, right? Can you keep them focused? I think that's important. Another thing I think you got to be adaptable and flexible. You can't be so rigid that guys don't want to play for you. We play hard. We play just as hard as anybody. But I think, the more the better you know your players, the better you can make a decision. Kids right now, this day with the cell phones and everybody wants to text and, there's not a whole lot of one-on-one face-to-face conversations. It's kind of hard to know sometimes what's going on with your guys. They're kids. They got a lot of stuff going on. They got problems just like we did when we were kids. Some of them have, parents that are going two different directions, and you don't know if they ate one night. And it helps if you know what's going on, because now you can be a little bit more flexible with how you deal with them. Man, I've learned so much in that area, not to just treat everybody the same, because you just don't know. There's a lot of stuff going on there, and you kind of got to have a good idea of what, if you see something off, you know what I mean? You got to be flexible and adaptable enough to, to kind of deal with that. And also too, your team, you may want to play a certain way, and maybe you just can't play. Maybe you don't have the personnel to do that. Are you good enough to adapt and be flexible? Coach Dyer tells me this morning, we were talking, and I kind of told him, I said, I had an idea about how I wanted to play next year. And I said, man, it's just been sitting on me, man. I think we can do it with this group based on the size. And he said, this is a true story, because I talk to him just about every day, right? And so he says, well, did you watch the Miami Heat, Philadelphia game the other day? And I said, no, I didn't get a chance to watch it. And he's like, well, Miami runs this matchup zone and blah, blah. I says, let me stop you right there, man. I'm not running no matchup zone, man. And I said, coach, I said, it works for them because they got, and he knows this. He's just giving me an idea, right? About something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I really don't feel comfortable with that, man. I mean, they're doing it with 6'6" length guards and 6'7" guards. I don't have that, so it looks a little different. I said, but, it's just things like that, just knowing being flexible enough to change what you're doing. The first year, I took a task to see to the state, at Carson Edwards, Fabian White, we were undefeated. We were number one team in the country, and we ended up losing to freaking DeSoto, right? And we had some things go wrong, but I get this anonymous letter in the mail that they're just hammering me. This, I don't even, to this day, I don't know who this is.
Wow.
Because they didn't sign it, but they're just hammering me. And if you were such a man-to-man guy, if you'd run some zone, you'd be a state champion. My gosh. But again, being able to be flexible and knowing your team and knowing what your team can do and what you can't do and what can win games, man, I just think that's super important in how you play and also how you handle your team.
But that's hard. That's hard, though. What you're talking about doing is it being flexible, adaptable, not just with your players and relationships, but within the scheme and moments in games or during a season. When to pivot, when to just put your head down as a group and keep pushing forward. Like communication, how do you gain more of that ability? Do some guys just have it, or does it just take time?
I think, for me, it just takes time. I think that's what it takes for everybody. I think when you find a young coach, you talk about coaches, right?
Yep. Coaches.
Yeah. So for a coach, there's times where I've said, man, that dude's good. He's going to be special as terms of a coach. And he's young. It's because I'm noticing he's doing some things that took me some years to figure out.
Hmm.
And so when you come into this business and you're a head coach at a young age, and like it looks like, hey, you're making all the right decisions at the right time, and man, it takes a while to get that. You kind of got to be seasoned a little bit to figure some of that stuff out, man. And I always thought guys like Clark over at Allen, young guy.
Yeah.
First time I played him, I was like, man, this guy's gonna be good, man. I mean, he does some really good things. He's a young guy, and I'm like, I like him. I like his style, And he's got good teams every year. And I think the older he gets, the better he's gonna get. And there's a lot of guys like that. The coach over at Keller does an unbelievable.
Yeah, Coach Weir's great. Yep.
He does a great job, and talking about crossing paths. I mean, when I was young at this, Coach Dyer used to tag me along with him. We'd go play in this men's league at this Mormon church in Duncanville. Well, he was one of the guys, I mean, we just, basketball, you cross paths like we talked about earlier all over the place. So, but I think he's another young, good coach coming around. And, there's some good ones out there. And when you see him doing good things, man, you just wonder, like, man, he's going to have a great career. Because he's getting all this stuff early. But, for most of us, I think it takes a little time, a little experience.
And I think too, maybe something not talked about a lot is the mistakes that you make along the way. Mistakes, one, and I think older coaches get this, and I'm kind of right in the middle of that range. I don't think I'm young anymore, but I haven't been doing it for 26 years either. I'm right in that. I'm not calling you old, coach. I'm right in that middle spot right there. But it's the mistakes that you make and being okay with making them. Like understanding that as much as we want our players to embrace the process and to have the goldfish mentality and to move on to the next play, like we've got to do that with our own mistakes that we make with a level of humility, maybe transparency with our players of the fact that we did make a mistake. But I think sometimes, like as coaches, how often do we hold ourselves back for fear of making mistakes ourselves?
Man, that's big. Yeah, absolutely. We want our kids to play fearless. What about coaching fearless?
Yeah.
You can control the pieces.
Yeah.
You don't have the ball now, you can't call timeout. So, you better hope you got something in there if you need to get the ball back, and your kids are well versed in that kind of stuff. So no, it's just something that you just learn along the way. It's your craft, right? It's just like an artist or musician or somebody. You get better with time, man. And it just, and when you see those things with somebody who's young, you just know that person, if he sticks with it, it's going to be, he's going to be good.
And I think too, majority of coaches, like their why for coaching isn't to make, especially the high school level, isn't to make a lot of money. Like it's not their why. Their why is they love the game and they want to help young people using basketball as a tool. I think coach, for doing this now for 3 years, and I think most coaches, that is the motivation. But different from a parent's perspective or even players, it's not just a game. It's also our job. Like literally sometimes how we feed our families. I think parents lose sight of that sometimes. And because it's just that it's their son's game that they're playing and it's personal to them, they forget that it's our job. And they sometimes cross that line that, maybe they shouldn't, but that's, coach, I think where the fear comes from a lot too at times is, how do I play this safe? Like, how do I make sure that I make decisions that won't lose me my job?
Yeah.
Man, tough line to balance right there.
Tough line, man. It's a tough business, and only coaches know it. Only us coaches understand it. I mean, shoot. And then how about this? How about being a good team, from the start, and you don't do as well, right?
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you got all these people have all these expectations of you, and perfect example was us this year. I mean, we you go into the playoffs, we're a top 3 team in the state, and we lose in the second round. Just didn't have it. Just didn't have it. We didn't make plays when we needed to make plays, and game went into overtime, and we just couldn't finish it off. And so you're gonna have years like that. It's nobody's fault. You don't blame the kids for it. It just didn't, the stars didn't align the way they were, and you try to get over it as best you can. Tell your kids you love them, and you move on. And at the end of the day, man, it's just a game. You don't want to let the game use you to where like you don't like the game. Man, I love the game just like you do. Yeah. The game's been everything. I've been part of the game in an organized way for 46 years of my life. That's a long time, man. Either to play it or coach it or be around it. It's all I know. Not that it's right. I'm sure everybody has their way. There's more than one way to skin a cat, but it's all I know. And I love the game and I want to give back to it. And like you said, I want to help young people, help them use it to make good decisions in their life.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI Podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.